you can put a lot bigger cash flow. Let's say $1 million. If you leverage, you can buy the $10 million cash flow.
What was his response when you said, hey, you want to sell some of your stock portfolio?
You know what? He was very intelligent and he didn't say anything to me. He was trying to say, listen, we need to wait a little bit more. So the stocks are usually growing, and which is true. But again, for me, the problem was I want to grow in double digits. I don't want to wait for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, even 7% historically, right? That's great. Let's say my idea was if I can do something with my hands a little bit, and back then I was still convinced and I need to do it by myself, all of it. But again, if I can do a little bit better, right, and I can earn like 20, 30, 40%, I was willing to put some more effort. I was willing to put some more energy into that. And that's exactly what I did. So, and he didn't say that much. He was trying to convince me to stay, but again, he was not that pushy. So, and half of my money was still with him. So he didn't say that much.
Cool. So what did you do? You went and bought a single family house?
Yeah, that was my first experience in the United States. I bought this single family house. And again, back then I was starting to listen Bigger Pockets. Bigger Pockets was a huge impact in me. The Robert Kiyosaki was the first idea, like when you start to really understand it's called the cash flow quadrant. If you remember, Jacqueline, that idea. So where you want to be, which just stands for employee, right? And you want to be like business owner, you want to be investor. So where you actually feed into that life. And then there's certain benefits to each section. And I get it. Some people saying, you know what, I want to think about business. I want to check out at 6 or 5 p.m. and that's it. I want to go talk to my family and spend time with my kids, right? And whatever the business, it's your problem, right? But then some people, like I said, and the idea of business ownership, it was very intriguing for me. So, and I was moving towards that direction. And I started to look at the cash flow for when I was working at the court, I was like employee. When I was professional athlete, I'm actually still employee, right? Unless you do something side, right? Something side hustle, right? Or business. And I was eager to move towards like, okay, so I get to the business, and even as a self-employed in the beginning, right? It became a business then with the big business. And then the next stage was investor. So I was kind of, moving on that steps up and the ladder up. And like I said, I bought this first house, and the idea of that cash flow where I said, I can create the equity because I was listening to Bigger Pockets. Bigger Pockets was very good at explaining like BRR, BRRR method, right? Like you said, the house hacking that came from there. I don't know where you got that term from. I got it from Bigger Pocket. I started to understand, oh, you know what? There's equity, there's leverage, right? And they were preaching saying, listen, the biggest advantage of real estate, you can leverage the returns. You can leverage what you can make. So meaning if you buy, and like if I bought, let's say $300,000 of house, cash, right? It's a one return. But if you start to leverage and you can put down only like 10% or 20%, right? You can put a lot bigger cash flow. At the end of the day, you just buy and have cash flow, and you can buy the cash flow with your own money at, let's say $1 million, right? But if you leverage, you can buy the $10 million cash flow, right? Or, $8 million cash flow. And that's a huge difference. And that's why I start to say, you know what? I want to buy the single family house, and I put as little as possible, right? That was my first experience. That was one criteria. The second criteria, I want to buy something which is I can instantly add the equity. I can instantly like cash out, right? So meaning, so I can, in my like personal example was the backyard was absolutely terrible condition, right? It was like a big dog cage. The concrete, we demolished the whole thing. We just created a really beautiful, cozy backyard. And then, so the kitchen was not up to par with just a remodeled kitchen as well. And that brought the value immediately to the house. Yes, we've done some work. It took me like about 4 or 5 months to do that, but it was just a beautiful at the end. So, and my standard was very high. So the people who walk in, they couldn't resist it. So where I was staying, right? The way the tents, it was so easy to get the tents. It was not fast, but it was easy because there was a lot of people saying, I want to be in a quality space first.
Yeah. Awesome. And how did that work from a cash flow perspective from you?
Great question. Was very minimal cash flow. The reason why, because I leveraged the whole thing. So, and because I'm in California, I start to understand that California, it's equity play more than anything. So it's appreciation play. Because if you look at the cap rate, it's very like a small, and how much can you make? 2-3% for your money? And you got to be happy and lucky, right? If you do, if it's not negative, especially right now. And back then was really good because the houses were growing. It was after the crisis, right? Of the housing crisis, and the house like steadily growing like 10-20% per year. So when I got in basically into that, I would say business plan, right? So I said, you know what? I'm going to rent it and I'm going to wait it out, right? The yearly, I'm going to be cashing out on the equity play, not that much on the cash flow. I think it was like $300, maybe $400 $200 cash flowing, right? I think 300 if I'm not mistaken. And then from that point on, I start to really become more sophisticated, saying, okay, what are my expenses? Remember you asked me that question, what was in Russia? Because first idea as a professional athlete, I was thinking through, you know what? It's a great savings account. Don't think about what you make. Think about what you're not going to spend. Right. As a professional athlete, it was high and inflated, and everybody's telling you got to be driving Mercedes or Bentley, right? And you need to be flying on the private jets. But it's like realistically, it's not true. You can experience that once, 2 times, but you need to own those things, right? Which is liability for you're going to be paying every single month for those things. You can rent it once if you want to go fancy, right? But then again, the idea of the real estate for me was I'm going to set it aside, and because it's secured and it's cash flow and weight, just set aside, and it's not liquid, which is another huge benefit for me. Was if I'm emotional and I was like, I can't just sell it, call my broker, say, just sell it right now. I need to spend it tomorrow, right? So you got to go through the process. You got to hire the agent, right? You got to find that, person who's going to buy. By the time you're done, you're like, you know what? I probably want to keep it for the next 10 years. So that's a great.
Real estate not liquid.
For me, it was a huge benefit. It's not liquid. It was like big and probably the most important benefit because you can set it aside and forget about that. Meaning forget, you can't even touch that. You understand you're going to go after different things, right? If you want to do something emotional, but not about real estate.
Got it. So take me from that first house that you bought to where you are today.
Yeah. So thank you, Jacqueline. That's a great transition as well. So I start to understand if I multiply why. Because there's 2 challenges came with house. One is once I finished remodeling, I couldn't get a tenant for 2 months, right? So what does that mean? Once you finish and put all the money into your I think it was 70,000 back then, into the remodeling rate price, right? Or the all-in price. And then you're like, okay, and I'm paying mortgage monthly as well. Like you responsible for whatever you rent for a mortgage, right? And plus another mortgage. And I was like, okay, it doesn't, it's not fun. But again, I swallowed that. That's fine. Whatever. I thought I'm going to put in the tenant and it's going to be all, nice and clean. But no, after 1 year, the guy said, we want to move out, or maybe a couple of years. I don't remember. And now I need to get another tenant. And then that took me another like 2-3 months. I was like, oh my goodness, I pay in another mortgage, right? If you look at the cash flow, right, you got $200 cash flow every month, right? And let's say how much you're going to benefit, right? $2,000 plus the maintenance. People are so picky. They just call me every second. So they want to change this, change that, this clock. I was like killed because you expecting that call, and my experience was different. And how
Your
I'm like
experience was zero expenses.
zero, yeah, zero, nothing. And now you just okay. And I start to become, like I said, more sophisticated, looking through the numbers, expenses, reg reports. I was like, oh my God, I'm working 24/7 for $200 a month. If you account for your time into that thing, I was like, you want to multiply that by 10? Because my idea was always multiplying the thing by 10, right? What are the results you're going to get? And I was like, no, no, no. Like, there's no way I'm doing this, right? Because now I'm going to be sitting on 10 different assets, which is if somebody moved out, you're responsible for liability of the, paying for this mortgage. And you got this, the tax bill, of course, tax bill, like I think it's increased by 20% in 1 year or so. And without knowing that, you're like, oh, boom, I got like, instead of like 3,000, you got $3,600 and stuff like that. So what I'm saying is I start to think through, okay, doesn't work because people are leaving, right? And then just one person responsible for liability of mortgage doesn't work because it's very, very management intensive, right? It doesn't work because if you want to get a maintenance guy, right, and you got small work, he's not going to show up because he doesn't want to do something like very, very little for $100, right? You got to give him like $1,000 for service or something like that. So that's another problem as well. And I was like, okay, there's got to be a different way. There's got to be a different way. And I'm part of EO Group, which is Entrepreneur Organization of Los Angeles. It's a business community, I would say. And I had a mentor back then, so for business side. And I asked my mentor, his name is Michael, I said, Michael, what do you guys do? So there's any other way you just own real estate? Because I want to buy apartment complex. I start to be, on the bigger pockets and researching what do you actually scale up from the single family portfolio. And it's apartment complexes, but it's not 4 units and 5 units. You go like 100 units, right? And now it's a business model. Now it's a lot of cash flow. Now you can hire. Now you can get property management on site and stuff like that. One roof, right? There's one AC, 5 ACs, but not just all over scattered to the, United States to one place. So I started to really dream about apartment complex. I was like, man, I want to buy apartment, whatever it takes. I'm going to buy apartment complex. And I'm driven walking on the street. Yes, that's how I met my partner. And then that's how I start to research on apartment complex. And I got this idea of syndication. And when I got this idea first, I was like, oh my God, yes, if I want to test it, if I want to start small, I understand. So there's a $50,000 minimum investment into apartment complex, right? Which is going to be, you're going to be part owner of that, right? Just a small portion. So an equivalent of whatever you put in. I was like, wow, that makes sense. And I start to really dig into different, I would say, knowledge operator, right? And how it works and what's a syndication. Because first of all, it felt like it's not possible. Like it's like a scam, right? I was like, what is that syndication? The real estate is get rich for sure if you stay long enough in the game. And I rely fully on my real estate portfolio.
Jacqueline and Melvin, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to listen to this episode of Get Diversified. Please make sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on future episodes. Finally, stop by our website and follow us on social media. Ciao for now. Make it a great day, and we'll see you next time. And remember, get diversified.